Welcome in to the Energy Tech Podcast presented by Opsite Energy. Today we're joined by Eric Moormon from Flexware Innovation. Guys, welcome to ICC 2025.
Hey, Jeff. Oh, man, it is good to be here. We're having lots of conversation right here at ICC 2025 in the heart of Sacramento. And with us, of course, is our guest, Eric Moormon with Flexware Innovation. Eric, glad to have you on the show, man.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Excited. Oh, it's great. We're glad you're here because we got a lot to talk about. You know, one of the things I know is that Flexware Innovation has been in the community, has been really aligned with Ignition, and is a premier integrator, right, with Ignition. And kind of tell us where you fit into that, you know, what you've been up to and what your role is there, man, with Flexware.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So like my name's Eric Mormon.
Yeah.
I joined Ignition, the Ignition team here at Flexware back when it was like 6 people back in like 2019, right?
Really?
Which we had been a premier integrator before that. Yeah. But definitely seeing it grow. Now we're up to like 30 people right now on our Ignition team and 60 plus people that do it in the company, right? My role overall is to kind of help architect different projects and help to especially grow and help design our projects that are in the MES space, right? And to help build out custom solutions that can scale with our customers using our Spark MES framework, which we've talked about some in the show today.
Awesome.
This week.
Well, you know, a lot of folks that don't know, so, you know, we are the Energy Tech Podcast. You know, we do have lots of energy customers. This could be anything from solar, wind, you know, energy, oil and gas, water, wastewater. We're touching, you know, data center. And the reason you're here is I think you're part of the community and it's typically, I know Flexware has got some great firepower horsepower in terms of manufacturing. So when people hear MES, that is your manufacturing execution system, right? And that I you know, the way I describe that is it sits in that layer where you're taking that data. It kind of acts as a flag, you know, if you will, for production. That's the best, the way I can describe it, the traffic cop of production.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. Yeah. It's like adding that layer on top. You know, you have the data, but then how do I help get some more action out of it, right? Past the alarming, right?
Yes.
How do I help drive my process? How do you tell you know, what's going on right now? You know, having dashboards that show you statuses and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right? Seeing your data, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So as the architect, I guess it sounds like you have your hand in lots of different, let's say, projects, right? Things that you're working on. But I want to ask you a few things first because, you know, there's a theme here and it's level up, all right? And one of the things I've noticed when you come to ICC, first of all, inductive automation is leveled up, all right? They've done this a few ways. Number one, this venue, right? Okay, so you got the venue and it's brand new here in Sacramento, was formerly at Folsom, if you've been, which I didn't ask you. Is this your first time? No, right?
No, I was here 2 years ago back in the Folsom facility. Love the new facility, love the new area. It's been great being over here. Looking forward to seeing what they do in the future years too with all this space. Yeah,
absolutely. So I think that's going to be a lot of growth. The other level up piece for Ignition has been 8.3, the release of 8.3, right?
Yeah,
it's a big
super
deal.
excited for.
Number 3 is they added the Prove It flavor. This was the Prove It conference. You know, I think the first one was back in February. This was Walker Reynolds and the 4.0 Solutions team, you know, their birth of that. And they brought that here to Ignition, right, with a part of ICC. So you get to experience that. But I'm going to tell you, the fourth thing is adding the folks from the Energy Tech Podcast, just because it gives Flexware Innovation, it gives you the opportunity, end users, product providers, partners, to come on the show and talk about and have conversations around Ignition, the platform. I mean, we're talking about all kinds of things, Eric.
Yeah.
AI, machine learning, MCP, everything's coming out and nothing is left off the table. So, you know, with that, we're not asking for secret sauce here, but let me ask you this. You're here at Level Up. What does that mean for you personally when I say, man, Mike, you know, this year there is a different feeling and it certainly have leveled up?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of ways that we're all having to level up. I mean, the industry is kind of crazy right now with all of the expansion we're seeing, right? All the new players coming into it, right? It's kind of crazy with everything going in. And you're kind of having to keep up with and try to chart your path, right?
Right.
And I think ICC has been great for that, right? You know, the Prove It editions fit really naturally in to see all of the different partners you can have and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And we've really been talking about even here at Flexware, right? How do we level up with all this stuff going on? How do we keep up with the change, right? You know, and I think it comes in a lot of ways, right? Like first you got to find the right partners that you're working with to make sure that you're driving the value and that kind of stuff, right? You're really
Absolutely.
driving value for the end customer.
Yes.
And then also, updating our same way as what IA was talking about, right? Making sure our development practice stuff and our customer experience is awesome, right?
Yes.
And it's great to just talk to people here, right? That are doing it in different ways and hearing their experiences and what works and what doesn't work, and we can all just make each other so much better through it all.
Yeah. And you
right?
know what? I think, when we are talking to folks, that's important. But one of them is you mentioned to me that you guys were involved in a huddle that was actually done here. So it's, you've got Prove It, you've got the ability to showcase things. And one of these that you've been able to showcase is some of what you're doing on the MES side. So kind of walk us through that. I wasn't there for that, but I really want you to share with the community and the viewers what that was about.
Yeah, so we are super excited to be added. So for those of you that don't know, Inductive Automation added a new partnership program for Integrator Solutions, right? So these aren't black box products, right? These are tools real life tools that integrators have to help speed up projects, right? And help drive value better for customers, right?
Right.
And we're super excited and super honored to be able to have Spark MES platform be part of the inaugural group of things in that. So it was super nice to have, as part of that, we got announced on the stage, right? And then we had a huddle over where we got to talk to different people coming by from various different industries, right? And just talk about, hey, what kind of value can we help drive for you, right? Like, where could this fit in, right? And that kind of stuff. What are the problems people are facing, right?
So what is it that you solve? Tell me about that in terms of Spark MES.
Yeah, so we solve several different problems with Spark MES. We cover most of the MES space and even some above, into some of that ERP, enterprise resource planning sort of thing, right? With inventory tracking.
Right.
The biggest things that we run into is customers have all of this equipment that's out there, right? And they may be able to see process values on a screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they want to know, hey, what's causing me the most downtime, right? Which machine is my bottleneck, right?
Right.
I want to see how is my outfeed going? How is it against my targets, right? And also knowing that when I finish producing, right, what is my data that's going on, right? What part numbers am I producing that are causing me the most issues?
Right.
That's really where Spark MES fits in, right?
So you're talking about leveraging insights here. So really what you're talking about is, a lot of people in manufacturing, they don't realize that there's a competitive advantage. That's what you're really building to.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like with Spark MES, it's not just about, okay, I give you a little bit more data than you're used to. What I'm hearing is that you're actually driving a competitive advantage.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, and I think the other part of it too that's really a big factor, because there's lots of MES platforms out there, right? There's lots of MES platforms here, right?
Right.
One of the keys of values that we drive is that Spark MES is an open platform, right? Where you can have everything's open. It's just native Ignition, right?
Right.
So it lets us have that flexibility to kind of build the system to match what the customer needs, right? What's going to drive the most value? Our goal is I always say that I don't want you to have to conform to the system. We should have the system conform to you, right? To match your process. And I think that's super important to really unlock the value.
So you shape that with Spark MES.
Yeah.
But I also know that, Flexware being a premier integrator, you guys also care about what you're collecting at the edge. I think you do. I know you do.
Oh, for
so
sure.
walk us through that, because you as the architect, you've run into a lot of challenges and cases. And, for your customers, kind of tell me a little bit about, hey, Mike, we have had challenges in the edge working with manufacturing customers. Here's some of the things we've been able to do by leveraging the edge.
Yeah. And I think that it's the starting point, right? Like a lot of customers are still at the place where we have machines, but we need to get the data in general, right?
Right.
And I think Ignition is a great tool for that, right? There's kind of a couple different levels to it, right? So one of the things that we really leverage at Flexware is that we're not only an Ignition integrator, we also have people who can do PLC logic, right? And writing that stuff. So for customers who need that level of help even, we can certainly get that, right? And then from there, we can use tools like Ignition Edge, which is a fantastic tool for getting data up into an MQTT broker, right? Which is kind of the thing right now for UNS, right? Getting the data up, right? And I think really just getting started on that, right? Knowing how do you structure your data, because it's not just about getting the data out, right? We can certainly help get the data out too, but then it's also about getting the data into an actionable state. And we do that kind of consulting all the time, both for SCADA and MES and beyond, right? Whatever you're really looking for. So.
I think one of the other challenges besides, looking at the edge, you have legacy or trap data that happens in every manufacturing vertical that I can think of, right? So it really doesn't matter. And I've been to quite a few. And so kind of walk us through that, because I think you personally and your team has techniques for, hey, Mike, we want to unlock data on cells and units, whatever that could be. I mean, you have the simple ones like palletizing units, you have all that, but there are some units that are proprietary that you can unlock. And what has been your experience in unlocking that equipment?
Yeah, I think that it depending on the type of equipment, it changes some, right? You have to the first question you have to answer is how. Like, how do we get this data out in general, right?
Yeah.
Are we going to have to do manual data entry, right? Or are we going to be able to do things like, using Ignition Edge or using some of those other tools to take the data and to like embellish it, right? Maybe you're integrating manual data with automated data and getting that up. Yeah, and I think, one of the reasons we chose to build on Ignition too is that Ignition's tag layer lets us do that genericization, right? A common thing with legacy equipment is that you've had, you guys have been producing for lots of years, and over those years, you've got equipment that's been produced by multiple different vendors, multiple different, companies with all different code bases, right? And different philosophies, right? So using Ignition, using good data design practices and stuff, and really, I think it really comes down to making sure that your integrator and yourself are aligned, right? So that you all know what the end goal is, so we can really make sure that we're getting that data format in such a way to be expandable, right?
Right.
Make sure it can grow.
Yeah. So you just said that. So you already talked about, first of all, finding the right partner. I think that's key. That's always great. You talked about what's the problem? Like, you're working your way backwards, and you're saying that right now. Hey, you really go look and see why we're doing what we're doing. How do we unlock this data, right? And then from there, you have what I would imagine is now solving for the common digital architecture to solve problems. And I think Flexware, the team has done that well. And kind of what are some of the things that you think you do, whether that's personal or on the team level, that we want to have that common digital infrastructure so we can see the problems, we can start working with our customer to solve them?
Yeah, I think really like the thing that I feel like we do extremely well is getting to know our customers and stuff and making ourselves part of the team. I know we talked about that just a second ago, right?
Yeah.
Is making sure that we're all on the same page. We're not just an integrator, end customer. We're a team, right? At that point, right? That can really make sure we do data. And you have to know the process to make sure we're getting that data out correctly and into a good and expandable structure, right?
Right.
The other thing that I think is super important when you're looking at like this digital transformation thing is really empowering the customer to be able to drive some of that on their own, right? So one of our big philosophies is that we're not trying to get customers stuck like, you have to rely on us for everything, right? We want to build tools, we want to build frameworks, we want to build things that you as the customer can work with to drive some of that transformation yourself, because that's really ultimately where you're going to be the most successful.
What do you think that is? And there's no secret sauce, from I think in terms of Flexware, you have some framework and common practice.
Yep.
Walk me through some of that. So, you've got some clients that you worked with, in any one of the verticals. Just kind of in your mind right now, if you could say, Mike, in the framework, these are the top 3 or 5 things that that are in consideration that we care about and we want our customer and client to care about, and then involve that with Ignition as well, kind of in how you envelop that.
Yeah. I think that the biggest considerations that we're taking into account with our platform is that, first I say it's going to grow, right? It's not going to be something that's going to be stagnant. It's going to grow, and it may be us making it grow, and maybe the customer making it grow. So I think one of the key aspects is making a system that has easily extendable, like, making sure we're using like, good design practices, having standards we share with the customer to make sure we're all aligned. And I think Ignition is a great tool for that. Ignition has, perspective and things like that really make it easy to get in and kind of land and expand, right? And a big part of that too is, we help out with doing trainings and stuff for people a lot, right? So that's definitely one major philosophy that we definitely go by, is making sure that it's customizable and expandable, right?
Right.
Another thing is it also needs to be like easier to maintain, right? A big part of it is understanding who is going to be maintaining the system, right?
Right.
So a big philosophy we always go by is that, we want our customers to be able to use Ignition and that kind of stuff, right? But we also want to have, front-end web-based interfaces that are easy to use, that for people who aren't like, Python programmers, right?
Right.
Or database programmers, that kind of thing, right? So we always want to build those kind of tools. And I think, Ignition, again, is a great platform on that. They have so much extensibility into it. It's honestly crazy how much you can do and add abstraction for it, right?
So what I'm hearing on this part is we're not talking about, and people misuse these words, and I want to make sure that we're not saying low code or no code.
Yeah.
What we're saying is truly a tool where we can add on a cell, we can add equipment, we can import information that's relevant to that part of the manufacturing process, whatever it is. Is that right? I mean, that's really what you're saying, is that you're empowering the operator and their own. Sometimes they have SCADA groups that aren't keen on Ignition right away. So there's some learning curve. You shorten that by giving them the capability to add on cells, modules. If they buy a plant tomorrow in merger and acquisition and said, guess what? We're going to add another run of this type of product or this type of project, right? We've got to be able to do that almost seamlessly. And you're saying you can do that with a framework and the tools in Ignition.
Yes, exactly. And Ignition makes it so easy to do, right?
Right.
I mean, it takes a lot of planning and design and expertise to do that, right? But once you have it up, I mean, we have customers we've worked with who have no Python programmers, no SQL experience, right?
Right.
But they get a new line, or they want to just expand to one line they didn't do.
Right.
They can do that in a matter of
Absolutely.
days, right? Which is great. That's
yeah, and already take on the normal OEE metrics that are typical anyway. But a lot of times, you're right. I think it's adding a feature. If I was a tank manufacturer, there may be the inherited line that I might pick up, right? So I think that's what you're relegating, or that's what you're talking about and alluding to is, Mike, there's lots of ways to make that flexible and add that capability without making it complex and another query and, being able to program in the Jython, in Jython to do so, right? You don't have to do that. So, great. I think that's a lot of great features. I want to focus on another area, and I think this is important. Next, you talked about your right partner. You talked about, hey, Mike, we've got to structure our data, the UDTs. We've got to structure that data, have that uniformity. We want to give our clients the empowerment and the tools. What about on the data side? What about, in terms of the flexibility of DataOps and making sure that you have some capability, whether that customer is taking data, keeping things on-prem, or they want to move things to the cloud, or they want to integrate with their digital supply chain or vendors,
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes down to separating it out and adding that flexibility to the end of it, right? Because every customer has their own desire of what they're going to do with that, right? And where they're going to want to go. One of the nice things about Ignition too is that with cloud version, with standard edition and stuff, it all behaves the same, depending on no matter where you put it. If you put it in the cloud or you put it on-prem or whatever, right? But the nice thing is that depending on where you're putting it, there are considerations like, how do I get the data to the cloud, right? And how do I get it securely? That's the thing you got to be careful about too, right? And we definitely have a lot of experience in doing that using both Ignition technologies and others, right? To just make sure we're getting it up there well.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And I think part of that, sometimes you have certain manufacturing types where sub-millisecond data might be important in terms if I'm running automotive and I'm stamping, where maybe that's not the case and I'm batching chemical, or if you have some discrete processes that are a little bit different. So I think you're right. I think you want to look in where I'm streaming, how is that, what is that, and then satisfy the data op requirement based on that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think too, one of the things that's important, especially like with Spark MES, right? We're trying to build a framework that can work for everybody, right?
Yeah.
And I think one of the important things is that, like you said, every industry has their own unique constraints, but also at the end of the day, we're all doing a lot of the same end goals, right? We have a lot of the same end goals. So it's all about abstracting that out, right?
Yes.
How do you build tools that can make it, get us to our end goal, but have the flexibility to add those unique characteristics to them, right? And I think that's really where an open platform really helps, and where Ignition really helps too, right? And the fact that it's so open, it's so easy to expand, land and expand it, right? That you can have that core library that you can then change anything about, right? And it's kind of what I said at the beginning about hey, you want to have this platform that I always say gets you hopefully gets you 80% of the way there.
Yes.
And then that last 20% of what makes you unique, right?
Yeah.
And you want to make sure you can do that.
Wow. I think that's awesome. I have a few more questions because, man, I want to keep you here. But I'm on a timer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I've got so many questions, but I want to ask you a couple. Number one is, we're almost to the end of the conference here, ICC 2025. What did you think is going to be at least another takeaway you might take before you head out?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of takeaways from this conference, right? I think the first one is just the stuff in the technical keynote about like, the new features coming in 8.3 and stuff.
Yes.
Super excited to get home and play with that. I
Okay.
unfortunately haven't had a whole lot of time yet to do it, but super looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And I think the things that I really am looking forward to, there's been kind of, I think, 3 main topics, right? There's been UNS, AI, and then DevOps, right?
Yes.
And I think the DevOps is really where my big takeaway is on this
Okay.
right now. I mean, we are going to explore the other two, right? But I think DevOps is like the first thing, making sure our processes are solid, right?
Yes.
How do we handle deployments, right? It's
Yep.
part of that scalability. I mean, how do we handle change, right?
Yep.
Because it's a big thing, especially when you're dealing with a platform that you are changing and evolving over different, every customer has their own like branch of it, right?
Yes.
Managing that in a good way to make sure that every customer is successful is challenging. And I think there's been a lot of takeaways from this that we can use good DevOps practices, using Git more with the new features of 8.3, right?
Absolutely.
They're going to make it so much better, right?
Yes.
Um,
And
looking
aside
forward to
from
it.
that, on DevOps and data handling, I'm going to ask you this last one because I ask every guest, because I think this is top of mind right now. How do you and the Flexware team, maybe it's just you personally, you can answer this in either way, personal or, from the Flexware perspective, right? What is the conversation and what do you think is happening right now in AI,
Mhm.
machine learning, and MCP?
Yeah. So I definitely think that's the hot topic right now, right? And it's something that at Flexware we've been putting a lot of time into recently. We've been talking to lots of customers. Hey, where do you see AI fitting into this, right?
Right.
Because we want to make sure that we're driving value, right? AI is a buzzword.
Right.
There's lots of people using it, and how do we use it successfully, right, to really drive a lot of value?
Yeah.
So we're definitely working towards that. I would say we're still in the exploratory phase of kind of how do we drive that value. But I think looking at things like how do we make configuration of things easier, right?
Right.
How do we use like maybe some natural language processing to make sure that we can do configuration from that, right?
Right.
How do we make reporting and getting the data out and use some of these AI tools
Right.
to kind of help us do that sort of thing?
Yes.
So that's the kind of stuff we're looking at. It's funny, I've gotten messages on my phone so many times from different coworkers that are in these different presentations, like, we need to look at this. We need to work on this, right? We're doing that. And so I know we're going to be doing a lot of work and super excited to see where we go with that. I know I've got a lot of research to do on MCP coming up.
You do, man. I mean, MCP is a big deal
Yeah.
right now, and there's lots of use cases for that already.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I think it's a really good foray into doing something quick with interoperability and connecting,
Yeah.
in terms of MCP. So, Eric, I mean, it's great to have you. I mean, I wish you could stay. Trust me, man, there's a lot to unpack here, but we are so happy you joined us right here on the Energy Tech Podcast. Eric, thank you so much for
Thanks for
joining us,
having
man.
me.
No, it
It's been
was
great to be
great,
here.
man. Thank you so much. And these are the conversations we're having right here at ICC 2025. I'm your co-host, Mike Plotis, with the Energy Tech Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This was great. Thank you, Eric.